أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد والحمد لله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Respected brothers and sisters and those joining online and listening on the Adhan radio, marhaban bikum jami'an, welcome to you all to another one of our Islamic studies classes. Inshallah, in tonight's Islamic studies class, we'll be speaking about the Salatul Janazah and the funeral prayer, and how to pray the funeral prayer, and how to bury the deceased after the funeral prayer, and what is the situation with shuhada and martyrs, how they are buried, and how their funeral prayer is conducted. This of course comes after our series of Islamic studies that we covered 37 lessons. 37 lessons we've done of this series. In our last lesson before the various topics, so what happened with our Islamic studies class is that for the past few weeks we've had slight change of plan. For example, last week we had the memorial and dua of Sheikh Abu Ahmad Hifdhur Rahman rahmatullahi alayhi, and the week previous to that there were a few situations. Nonetheless, in our previous lessons before that, we spoke about, if you remember, we spoke about the virtues of Masjid al-Aqsa, we spoke about the virtues of Sham and Palestine. That was a few lessons we've covered that in Islamic studies. Prior to that, we spoke about the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in October time, because this was most suitable discussion at the time, because we are going through the month of seerah. Then after, in a special exclusive class of Islamic studies, we had a full discussion on the whole concept of how to support Palestine, protesting and so on, and the legality of it, the Shari'i perspective, is it jaiz, is it not, what are the remits and so on. That was a 1 hour 40-minute discussion, which was also live streamed and is available in our YouTube channel now. Before this, on lesson number 37 from order, so the Islamic studies classes have been going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until 37. Up to 37 we spoke about how to attend to visit someone who is feeling so sick that they're about to pass away. A muhtadar, someone whose last moments are present. That was the last lesson that we had from the series. Then we broke away from the series and spoke about a bunch of different stuff. Today inshallah we're going to return to that series. And so today's lesson is Islamic studies, lesson number 38. Carrying on from those previous discussions, how to bury a person. And this is a very suitable time to discuss this, because especially of course with our imam, former imam, wallahi, today I was in his office today, and it was a vivid memory came to me of how he was and etc., and how I used to see him in that very same office. I used to see him, subhanallah. And now he is gone. May Allah raise him in the highest places in Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. Amin Rabbil Alameen. It's a huge loss for our community. And also because of what we're seeing around the world, because of an excessive death. We see, for example, in Palestine, the death toll now is 20,000 plus. So this is a discussion and a topic that needs to be understood by Muslims. Adults, Muslims should know, as a part of life, as a part of the life process, how to go and help a person who is passing away. How, if there was a need, how to wash that body, how to do kafan of that body, how to do janazah of that body, how to dig a grave, how to bury that grave, bury the person in the grave, and what are the steps and protocols and the sunan thereafter. This is all important for any Muslim to know this, because you could be faced with that responsibility at any time. Furthermore, this is not a sunnah, this is fard kifaya, this is a communal obligation. Meaning, if some people do in the community, then everyone is freed from the task. However, if nobody fulfills the obligation of janazah and kafan and dafn and burial, and nobody knows how to do, then the whole community will be sinful. Because this is fard kifaya. And so with that we begin in our book 121 of Ascent to Felicity, مراقي السعادات في علمي التوحيد والعبادات. Ascent to Felicity, which covers the 5 pillars of Islam, which includes Tawheed and Ibadat, i.e. 5 pillars, Shahada, Salat, Sawm, Zakat, and Hajj. We've covered all of this from lesson 1, 2, 3, 4. You can find this on our YouTube channel, Islamic Studies series. The funeral prayer, Janazah, is a communal obligation. It's a fard kifaya. 446 says. That is, if even one person in the community fulfills the obligation, then the entire community is absolved of it, meaning the job is done and the responsibility is completed. The same ruling applies to the preparation of the body, i.e. its washing and its shrouding and its burial. If one person, even one person, it would be a big task for that one person. If they were to do the shrouding and ghusl and kafan and dafn and janazah, even one person, then the job is done. However, if that one person doesn't do and nobody does at all, the entire community would be significantly and majorly sinful. If no one performs his rites, however, then the entire community is sinful for having abandoned them. It's a big sin. As Muslims, and Islam teaches us that we honor the deceased. A deceased person's body is honored. It is washed, buried, and it is washed and done kafan over, and it is done janazah over, and it is buried in the most dignified way, in an honored way, carried on the shoulders. It is not harmed. It is not mutilated. It is not dishonored. It's not dissected in like all of these situations that arise, and sometimes people of no faith, when they come to animosity and hatred, they do disgusting things. Furthermore, we believe that when a person dies, the entire body should be buried. Because this is a very common question. Nowadays, when someone passes away, the hospital wants to do post-mortem. They want to analyze someone's, for example, liver, kidney, heart, lungs. You say, how did that person pass away? Are we allowed to do post-mortem? The answer is, in simplicity, if the hospital needs to investigate a particular part of the body, for example, the kidneys, the livers, whatever it is, and they say that we need to hold on to this part for 1 month, 2 months, few weeks. Does that mean that the body should remain unburied for 2 weeks, 3 weeks? No. If they say that this is only one organ that we need, then the rest of the body should be buried, and then thereafter, the remaining part of that body, which has been released by the hospital thereafter, should also be buried, ideally in and around the same place as the previous body. Meaning the human body should remain intact, and the entirety of it should be buried in the noble way, just like Allah created us from dust and clay. We return to clay, and that's why we say minha khalaqnakum wa fiha nu'idukum wa minha nukhrijukum taratan ukhra. From it we created you, and in it we shall return you, and therefrom you shall be resurrected once again. So it is therefore a communal obligation. It is performed by saying in one's heart. The intention is first and foremost of any ibadah. Innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. Intention has to be there. If you're just praying and do the 4 takbirat, but you never had no intention of janazah, then your janazah is not complete. I intend to pray for the sake of Allah the Most High and to supplicate for the deceased. The follower should additionally intend to pray behind the imam. So the imam makes the intention. If you're alone, then you make this intention, and if you're the imam, you make this intention. Then I intend to pray for the sake of Allah the Most High and to supplicate for the deceased. Some people's mind might be confused. How come you're putting the dead body in front of you? What does it mean? Don't have any silly thoughts. This is from the Sunnah. We are praying to Allah and making dua for the deceased. Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa afihi wa afu anhu. Allah, forgive him and expiate his sins and raise him in Jannah. But we are ultimately praying to who? To Allah, and making dua, supplication for the deceased that's before us. And this is, had it not been from the Sunnah to pray janazah in this way, we would never have prayed janazah in this way. Because all ibadat are tawqifi, are exactly as instructed and permitted and shown to us by the Quran and the Sunnah. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as this way you've seen me pray. Khudhu anni manasikakum. Take from me your obligations. So we do everything in ibadah exactly as stipulated and shown to us by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then from this also, or towards this also, وَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ. That everything that's innovated when it comes to matters of ibadah is a bid'ah, is an innovation. And all bid'ah when it comes to ibadah is dalala, is misguidance. And dalala, misguidance, is in the annar, is in the fire. this ahadith is talking about the ibadah realm of things. It's not talking about the aada realm of things. What's aada? Aada is anything beyond ibadah, is what we know for the devotion of worshipping Allah. Aada is like, for example, how you live your life, how you eat, how you clothe, etc. That's why we wear different clothes to the Prophet ﷺ right now. We're not saying that he wore these thobes like that or shirts like, because these are from aada. How he rode. We have cars, we have jeeps, we have etc. He rode a mule and a donkey because he's aada. So we don't have to exactly. But when it comes to ibadah, worship, we have to copy exactly like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so we make the intention that, oh Allah, I'm praying for you, janazah, to make dua for this person. One then says the first takbir. Of course, this is according to the Hanafi school of law. Janazah here is being instructed according to the Hanafi school of law. Ultimately, the construct and the structure of the janazah prayer in all four schools is the same, which is the 4 takbirat. What's different is what we say after each one of the takbirat. There's some difference between the schools of law. Okay. After the first takbirah, which is Allahu Akbar, Imam says raise his hands, just like you do in takbirat al-tahrim in salah, and then you fold your hands. This folding of the hands remains folded until the end of the salah. Unlike Eid salah. This is where some people get confused. They think it's like Eid salah, so they're doing Allahu Akbar like that throughout the salah. But when it comes to janazah, you only do 1 takbirat al-tahrim, the first takbir, and the rest of the other 3 takbirat, you say it quietly, but you do not raise your hands. You say Allahu Akbar, but with your hands tied down. And then you say salam, and you release your hands. This is dissimilar to Eid salah, when people are saying Allahu Akbar and raising their hand three times in the first rak'ah and then 3 times in the second rak'ah. So then the Imam says Allahu Akbar, or if you're praying alone, you say Allahu Akbar. And then you fold your arms and you recite. What do you recite? Athana. The first thing you recite in the Salatul Janazah, just like you do in any other salah, is Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabaraka ismuka. Or if you want to stop, Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa tabaraka ismuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. You can say غيرك like the way you say, because the fatha there, but the fatha is there for wasl when you're joining. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarak ismuk. When you're joining like that, then the fatha is, it's like any Quranic ayah. If there's a fatha kasra dhamma on it, when you stop it, it becomes sakin. So this is the Arabic language, how it works when it comes to wasl and waqf, stopping and resuming and continuing and joining. So the first thing, Allahu Akbar, Subhanaka Allahumma athana. Then also after that, it is permissible to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Fatihatul Kitab. According to the Hanafi school of law, Fatiha is not required. According to other schools of law, Fatiha is required. And that's why they said in a very interesting way, some people might get angry by looking at, well, how? But it's based on the Quran and Sunnah. They recite, although it is permissible to recite Fatiha, okay? Although he says, he doesn't say you must recite Fatiha, it is also permissible for you to recite Fatiha. So if you recite Fatiha, because the Prophet ﷺ said, La salata illa bi Fatihatul Kitab, there is no salah except with Fatihatul Kitab, which is Al-Fatiha. Every salah has to have Fatiha, and based on that, other schools of law have said there has to be Fatiha. But according to the Hanafi instruction and the guidance, and if you open up the bigger books which has more space for adillah, you will find their evidences for it as well. Like we've said many a time before, every school has its stance, and every school has evidence, and that's why they're a school. It's not the opinion of a random guy, okay, somewhere in Persia, like some people imagine. And we've said this before, and we'll say it again, not to just to remind you that those who assume that the schools of law are not based on Quran and Sunnah, they must then answer the question: what are they then based on? Torah and Zabur. This is a question that sometimes people say it's not based on Quran and Sunnah. So what is it based on? The Bible and Torah, is that what it's based on? No, it's based on Quran and Sunnah, but all of the ulama have collected and framed the legal work and the legal texts in slightly different ways, and that's why you end up with slightly different results. But at the end of it, the structure of it is the same, the 4 takbirat, Subhanaka Allahum, and then Fatiha. And then you say the second takbir, Allahu Akbar. After the second takbirah, raise your hand, you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad until the end, and Allahumma barik ala Muhammad until the end, which is the As-Salah Al-Ibrahimiyya. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. That's the after the second takbir. Then you say this third takbir. After the third takbir, you make dua for the deceased. And if the deceased is a adult, man or woman, the recommended dua is Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina wa saghirina wa kabirina wa dhakarina wa unthana. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإسلام ومن توفيته منا فتوفه على الإيمان. Oh Allah, اغفر لحينا, forgive our alive, وميتنا, and forgive those who are passed away, وشاهدنا, and those who are witnessing and present, وغائبنا, and those who are absent, وصغيرنا, and for our small, and for our وكبيرنا, and for our big adults, وذكرنا, and for our males, وأنثانا, and for our females. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإسلام. O Allah, those whom you've allowed for them to live on, allow for them to live until their death with Islam. ومن توفيته منا فتوفه على الإيمان. And those who passed away, allow for them to pass away with Iman. This is one of the du'as. There are many more du'as you can recite, but this is of course generally when we're teaching public, we say teach one du'a, you can add more from the du'as as well. اللهم اغفر له وارحمه وعافه واعف عنه ووسع مدخله واغسله بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقه من الذنوب والخطايا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس وباعد بينه وبين خطاياه كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. And there are longer du'as like that, which all says Allah forgive him, Allah have mercy upon him or her, and oh Allah raise her in Jannah or him in Jannah, and so on. That's after the third takbirah, the third takbirah. After the fourth takbirah, Allahu Akbar, you say salam. Okay? So the first takbir you start, and after the fourth takbir you say salam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And that's the end of Salatul Janazah. He then says the fourth takbir followed by the closing two salams. One does not seek forgiveness in the janazah prayer for a deceased child or insane person, as neither bears legal responsibility, rather one says. If it's a child, you don't say, oh Allah forgive the child, because the child is sinless. We believe that children are sinless. So what do you say? Allahumma ja'alhu lana faratan wa ja'alhu lana ajran wa zukhran wa ja'alhu lana shafi'an wa mushaffa'a. Oh Allah, make him or her one who is sent forth on our behalf, as well as reward that is stored as treasure for us. Make him an intercessor for us and accept his intercession for us or hers. What does that mean? That children that pass away, they are only going forward as intercessors on behalf of their parents. Subhanallah. This is a huge reassurance and comfort for those who are in Gaza and in Palestine whose children are passing away, more than 10,000. Their children are only going forth to wait for them at the doors of Jannah. Their children are only going forth to intercede on behalf of them, to wait for them and to intercede on behalf of them, of their parents, until they go into Jannah. Subhanallah. And you saw that clip of that grandfather who was saying goodbye to his granddaughter. Ruh Ruhi, the soul of my soul. Subhanallah. This one clip broke the internet, we could say. You know, it was so effective that many people even accepted Islam because of it. Women and men, they changed their heart because they try to show an image of a person with a turban and a face and a beard like that as someone evil, monster, terrorist, whatnot. But this one person, his sweetness, his gentleness, his calmness, his love, his compassion, his softness towards his granddaughter and a child showed so much sympathy, so much empathy, and so much humanity that it undone so much of that propaganda. Subhanal Malik. So yes, children, they go forth as intercessors on behalf of their parents and behalf of their loved ones. So we should remember that, and there's a big reassurance from Allah for us. And if someone is able to have patience for the sake of Allah, having this yaqeen in their hearts that Allah Azza wa Jal will give them better, Allah will replace with better, that we are for Allah and we shall return to Allah and everything is with Allah, and Allah is the controller of all affairs. Right now it feels as though the world is helpless. Right now it feels as though, when is Allah's help going to come? Right now it feels like, when is it going to stop? But don't, brothers and sisters, for a moment forget that Allah is fully 110% in charge. Nothing has changed. Allah is allowing for everything that is happening. You might feel like it's out of control, but qasaman billah, by the name of Allah, but we take oath by Allah that everything is inna kulla shay'in khalaqnahu biqadar. Everything is in the precise and meticulous measure of Rabbul Izzati Jalla Jalalu. He is allowing for it to happen. And for those who are afflicted, their ajr will be so significant and so great that they will feel like they woke up from a dream. The difficulty of those who face difficulty in this life, and then when they wake up in the next life, to see the beautiful and angels that welcome them, and the comforts of the grave, and the width of the grave, and the mosque of the grave, and the bedding of the grave, and the life of comfort and joy in the grave, and then the easy reckoning and the easy entry into Jannah. You know when you have a bad dream, and you suddenly wake up and you think, oh, thank God that wasn't real. Alhamdulillah, got away clean. That's exactly what that is how a person will feel when they come out on the other side from a difficult life. It was like a bad dream. They will remember what happened, but they will feel like they've now woken up. You know, people are dead until they die, they wake up. People are dead until they die, they wake up to the reality. Because the life of the afterlife is the real life. And the life of this life, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ, is a delusion of enjoyment. Sounds a bit like the Matrix, as in the concept of the Matrix. We believe this is reality, but the reality of the Akhirah is the bigger reality. May Allah allow for us to be united with our loved ones in Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. If the deceased is buried without a janazah, without a funeral prayer, then it is performed over their grave, unless the body is disintegrated, which is known by estimation. Someone has passed away recently. His janazah wasn't prayed, should have been prayed, because maybe, for example, the authorities didn't know that it's supposed to be janazah. So you go to the graveyard and you pray janazah there for them as a backdating and a qada of the janazah that was missed. The funeral prayer is performed over there. This is a very important mas'ala, brothers and sisters. A lot of parents ask this question: is the funeral prayer prayed over a miscarried fetus, a siqt? You know, sometimes children are born, they pass away. During birth or before birth, they are stillbirth. They are born dead, or sometimes they pass away after, slightly after, or during. This happens. May Allah give ajr jazeel for those who are patient and believe in Allah and have tawakkul upon Allah during such a difficult time. The funeral prayer is performed over a miscarried fetus if most of it came out while it was alive before dying. Meaning the baby is being delivered and most of the body exited while the baby is still alive, and then suddenly it passed away. Immediately after that, you know, less of the body was still remaining inside before, and then the baby passed away, or it passed away afterwards. In all cases, if most of the baby came out alive into this dunya, then it is counted as alive, and so therefore it is treated as a child which is buried and which is done janazah over, which is shrouded and janazah over, and is also buried. So just to read that section again, the funeral prayer is performed over a miscarried fetus if most of it came out while it was alive before dying. Otherwise, if it was not alive at all, it had no life when it was born, it was a stillbirth, then the fetus is simply washed, wrapped in a cloth and buried without a funeral prayer, because it wasn't alive when it came into this dunya. The most deserving of leading the funeral prayer. So now we've understood how the funeral prayer works. Now who should lead the funeral prayer? The most deserving of leading the funeral prayer is the head of state, is the Amir, is the Sultan, is the King, or is the Khalifa, is the Khalifa. But head of state also can be referring to the head of state of, you know, a Muslim country. Followed by his representative. If the head of state can't come, then his representative, who's represents him. Then otherwise, if not the representative, then the local judge. The local judge, the chief judge of the local community, he would be, if it's of course Muslim, we're not expecting. The judge has to be Muslim. And then if not, the judge is not there, then the local imam. This is of course more applicable to us because we don't have judges, we don't have amirs, and we don't have sultans in the UK. We have local imams. So when the janazah is taking place, the first priority is the imams. Then after that, it is the guardian, the wali. The guardian of the, so for example, if the son is present and knows how to lead the salatul janazah, and the imam says, no problem, go ahead, then this is when the wali has the right to lead the janazah. The funeral prayer is not performed over rebels or highway brigands. Rebels, those who have rebelled and done khuruj and opposed and the Muslim Ummah and the Muslim leadership, or have become highway robbers, who became basically highway robbers, are terrorists, who terrorize people and their life and their safety, and they rob people. They have a very severe punishment. Islam has extreme importance and emphasis on safety and security. Those who break that safety and security are dealt with extreme harshness in Islam. So that's why those who are إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض. It is mentioned specifically in the Quran. Of course, this is talking about an Islamic country and an Islamic leadership and Islamic Sharia and etc. There's a particular capital punishment designated for them. But becoming a highway robber and etc. is a big severe sin in Islam. Okay, so what did it say? The funeral prayer is not performed over the rebels. So this is again a judgment that a mufti or a judge or a hakim would make in that regard. It is permissible to what it is. Now the question. So that was one question. Highway rebels and etc. A common question comes. A person who's accepted Islam, became shahada, took their shahada, reverted to Islam, but they have a family member who's passed away. Are they allowed to go to their funeral? Common question. Always comes up in this country because we have a lot of people who are accepting Islam. It is permissible to wash and bury a non-Muslim relative. So even if not only are they allowed to attend, if there is a need, they are allowed to wash the body themselves, because that's reality, isn't it? If someone's relatives passed away and there's no one else to wash it, they are allowed to wash and bury them. Of course, they don't do janazah for them because they're not Muslim. If they're not Muslim, they don't do janazah. If they are Muslim, they do. They wash and bury the non-Muslim relative without having to adhere to the sunnah way of doing so. They can wash it in a wash. It doesn't have to follow all the protocols of how you wash a Muslim body. You wash it properly, but there is a particular method of how you wash. And inshallah, bi'idhnillah, I did promise this before. I want to invite someone who is a trained person for washing body and shrouding to come and show us how they actually do it. That would be a very important and a practical lesson, inshallah. I want to arrange this. I'm going to try, bi'idhnillah, to do this as soon as possible, because a lot of this theory doesn't really make sense to us. But when you watch it in reality, as in if someone comes and shows to us someone can pretend to be someone can be buried, as in for the sake of ta'aleem, for the sake of listening or lessons, or we can get a mannequin or something. Let's see what happens, inshallah. So we can figure out. Okay, but they are washed. If they're a non-Muslim and a Muslim has to go to visit and to attend the washing and the burial, they are allowed to wash the body and to bury it as well. And the body may be given, or alternatively you can give the body to the people of that religion that they're following, okay, and let them deal with it. But either way, we believe that they should be buried. They should be buried, and they should be washed, and they should be shrouded, not burned like some people do. This is not allowed in Islam. You know, cremation. In Islam, we don't believe in this. It should be buried. منها خلقناكم وفيها نعيدكم ومنها نخرجكم تارة أخرى. Okay, 455, just a clarification here. Moreover, the Muslim relative may follow the funeral procession from afar. So now in the funeral procession, for example, they're non-Muslim, they're still Christian, they're still from a different faith, and the person reverted to Islam, and they happen to have to attend the funeral. They may not be fully involved, but they can watch and follow the funeral procession of afar, because it's a very sentimental time and very emotional time, and so on, and it is allowed for them to watch the funeral from afar after having washed the body if they have to. And if they need to, they can also bury as well. One funeral prayer may be performed over an entire group of deceased, yet a separate prayer for each individual body is preferable. So we've seen janazah of multiple people. I've seen a child praying janazah over his entire family. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. We see this every day, again and again it's happening. But it is jaiz, that's what they do, because they don't have time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the food in their belly to have the energy to even, they don't have the clothes. By the time some are buried, more are killed. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. The whole thing is a funeral procession. The whole of Gaza right now is like a mortuary, where they process the dead bodies. They call it a graveyard. One funeral prayer may be performed over one entire group so you can have multiple people, and we see that in all, like Masjid al-Haram, Mecca, Medina. We happen even in our local Islamic mosque. Sometimes we see that people are praying multiple janazas in one go, though individual janazah is preferable. When carrying the biya, when carrying the biya, as in the thing that we carry the body with, the coffin if you like, it is recommended to first place the front right side, then the back right side on the shoulder, followed by the front left. So right first, you carry first, slightly, and then obviously you carry both, but when you lift it up, the right first, right front, right back, and then the left hand side, that's how you lift it, and you put it onto your shoulder. It is recommended to move fast when carrying the body, like slightly, with a slightly bit of sense of rush and hastiness when you're walking with the body. But not so fast that it would cause the body to wobble or to move. Slightly, the sense of rushing in the walk as they carry the body towards the graveyard. It is more preferable to walk behind the procession than in front of it. This is adab, guys. Sometimes you might go to a janazah, you don't know what to do. The body is being carried. Should I go ahead of the body or should I go behind the body? The adab and the sunnah is that you walk behind the body, let the body go forth first. It is disliked to raise one's voice with dhikr or the like. You shouldn't be saying loud adhkar when you're walking for janazah behind the coffin and etc. If you're going to make dua, you should do quietly and in calm and composed manner, as well as to sit down before the body is lowered into the grave. You don't just halfway sit down, you wait for the body is being lowered into the grave. Before that you remain standing, watch the entire procession, help with the burial, help with the carrying, help with whatever you need to help with, but you don't sit down, you sit down afterwards, after it's been buried. The grave is dug the length of at least half a body's length into the ground. But the graveyard will be dug based upon the situation, and the graveyard people who are the grave diggers, they will know, have a better idea of how deep to bury. There are two shapes though. There is the lahad, the L shape, as you see in Jannatul Baqi', for example. When you go to Medina, you see they do, or in many Arab countries they do down and then like an L shape. That's called the lahad. And there is a shaq, which is like a downward grave that we see mostly in our graves in Gardens of Peace or otherwise. The grave is dug of at least half a body's length into the ground. It is dug in an L shape with the niche, the inner part that caves in, facing towards the Qibla. So the person should be, the inner part should be towards the Qibla, rather than straight down shaq, except for soft earth. So ideally, it's preferred to have a niche, as in a lahad, where the ground is firm. But if it's soft earth, if it's muddy, if it's not going to hold the weight, then a shaq is permissible. And a lot of the times in this country, it's raining, it's soft, the earth is soft, and so on. The one lowering the body in the ground says, in the name of Allah and in the way of the Messenger of Allah. So the person who's carrying the body, and there's usually a few, say, Bismillahi wa ala millati Rasulillah. Bismillahi wa ala millati Rasulillah. In the name of Allah and in the way of our Messenger and according to the path and the millah of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The body is directed towards the Qibla while on its right. It's made to lean slightly towards the right, facing the Qibla, because the grave itself should be facing towards the Qibla. Okay, right. The knots of the shroud are untied. If the knots of the shrouds are untied and unbreak bricks are laid against the niche and thereby sealing it off with the grave. A lot of the time they're putting wood here, we've seen in the graves. The grave of a woman, not that of a man, is covered before her body is placed in it. So for a woman, it is also from the adab and from the awra, and not from the awra, but from the sitir, from the satar, and from the tasattur, from being extra precautious with body shape not being exposed. 462 explains that is in order to provide extra concealment. It is recommended, it is not must, but it's recommended, mustahab, to cover the woman's grave with a garment or a sheet while her body is being placed therein until the unbaked bricks are laid against the niche. This does not apply for man's grave. So for women, there is mustahab, it's recommended, it's not a must, that while her body is being lowered into the grave, that there should be a curtain around it. so that there is extra coverage, so that nobody else unnecessarily sees the shape of the body or the body as it's being lowered. Now again, you might be thinking this is a bit serious, a bit extreme, it's a bit difficult. It's mustahab, it's not a must. If someone wants to, if they can, they should. Otherwise, it's not a must. So it's important to know that. Right, thereafter, dirt is poured into the grave and then rounded on top of it with an elevation of a handspan or a bit more to resemble the hump of a camel. As you've seen, the grave is slightly raised on top. The soil is slightly raised on top of the grave after the dirt and the soil is poured over it. It is prohibited to build a structure over the grave for the sake of decoration. So that's a mas'ala to be very careful about. 463, the author does not mention in his Imdad al-Fattah, but some scholars have deemed it a good to place some bricks or stones over the grave so as to protect it from being dug up. So now, there are different situations, right? So generally speaking, there should be no decoration on the grave. But if there is a fear that foxes or animals will dig it up, will go inside, will eat the flesh, or thieves may want to steal parts of the body, or the kafan, or the likes, then it is permissible in that case, because of necessity, to seal it off with a structure. Yes, sir.
So is that to do just on the grave? So you know people do that domes and stuff. Is that okay?
So this is a mas'ala that we should try to avoid. There's no need for it. In fact, the sunnah way of the Prophet Muhammad is that he was buried in the room that he passed away, and there was no decoration, there was no tazeen, there was no extra structure. This is better to avoid. It should be avoided. This stuff should be avoided. Okay. Of course, we know when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad and the dome above, his grave became encircled into the masjid because of the expansions. So that's a separate issue. The grave of the Prophet Muhammad and is a separate mas'ala, is a specific mas'ala which should be understood. Again, this is a very sensitive and important topic which should be discussed thoroughly, because there is a lot of that in a lot of our cultures, decoration and we know all the stuff that goes down, right? So it's a serious matter and it should be understood properly and warned against the bid'ah, innovations that take place there all of the times, and shirk as well that takes place in a lot of these graves where people are doing haram things. You know, it's a separate masala, inshallah, that should be understood and talked about fully, inshallah. Okay, if there is a legitimate necessity, it is permissible to bury multiple bodies in one grave. In that case, sand and dirt are used to make a barrier between each body. So mass graves are jaiz based on necessity. It's not the case, it shouldn't be the case, but we've seen there are times where it is needed because of excessive death and excessive killing. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. It is not permissible to transfer the corpse after its dead body after its burial, once the grave has been filled with dirt, unless the land turns out to have been confiscated or for any other actual need. 464 will explain. As for transferring the body before its burial, there is no harm in it if there is a reason, if it is within a reasonable distance, which the Jews estimate to be about 2.3 miles. This estimation was based on the fact that traditionally the graveyard of a town might have been that distance away from the town itself. For this reason, some scholars deduce that what is disliked is to transfer the body to another town altogether, based on the latter opinion. Look, ideally, once the body is buried, leave it there. Unless there's an actual need for whatever reason after, that will be a fatwa to seek from the muftis of the time to try and figure it out. But generally, they should be left alone. It is recommended to visit the graves. It is recommended, ya habaib, recommended. Some people think for some reason. The Prophet ﷺ said, كنت قد نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور ألا فزوروها. That I used to previously tell you not to visit the graves, but now I command you go and visit them. It's from the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ used to visit the graves. So visiting of the graves for ziyarah, for remembering death, for making dua for the deceased person, you know, this is all from the Sunnah, and it's a huge, big ajr that you get for that, as well as a huge reminder for your death as well, and it puts your life into perspective. Every time I've gone to a graveyard, I've come back definitely more concerned about my death and my afterlife. So, you know, it's a big sunnah that we should try to practice. It is recommended to visit the graves and recite Surah Yasin, it says here, even if sitting next to them, due to that which has been narrated, namely, whoever visits the graves and recites Surah Yasin, then on that day, Allah will lighten the punishment for them if there were any punishments, And he, the reciter, will have many good deeds as there are deceased in that graveyard. 465, let's explain this. This hadith has been narrated by a Hanbali scholar, Abu Bakr, Abdul Aziz, Sahib al-Khalal, and with his chain of narrated sanad in Al-Kitab al-Sunan on the authority of Anas ibn Malik. Now, I haven't actually done a thorough analysis of this hadith as to know what the situation is, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some discussion around its level of strength and etc. But what we do understand is that when you visit the grave, and when you make dua for them, when you recite Quran and etc., this helps. This brings comfort to the people of the grave. It brings comfort to the people of the grave. So this is a sunnah that we should try to, inshallah, practice. It is disliked to sit at the graves for other than reciting the Quran, or to step into them, or to pluck out moist grass from the graveyard. 466 says, unless while reciting the Quran, making dhikr or praying for the inhabitants while walking around, it is disliked to sit at the graves for other than dua. You shouldn't be just sitting at the graveyard for no reason. Some people might want to do that, but you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be plucking out any plantation or moist grass, because this is against the instruction. So you should not pull out any moist grass or leaves or etc. from the graveyard. Finally, inshallah, quickly as well, martyrs and shuhada. What happens to them? A martyr, 468. This section deals with martyrs in a legal sense in relation to the ruling of this life, such as not washing the body with regard to the afterlife. Only Allah, the Most High, knows who will be among the martyrs, since the martyrs is based solely on intention. Meaning, martyrs, when we talk about martyrs, we're talking about what the apparent. We don't know what's the intention, because a person will only be accepted as a martyr and a shaheed if the intention was correct. Otherwise, we know that one of the most severe hadith that the Sahaba would shudder to narrate is the hadith of the first groups with whom Jahannam will be ignited, and they are some of the most highest practicing people, i.e. the Qari and the person who donates and the person who's a martyr, but they did it for the wrong intention. So they done the most loftiest of actions, but with the wrong intention, and so they were in the hellfire. They were the first to go to the hellfire. So we are saying martyrs based on situation, based on the apparent, based on the external. The martyr is one who is killed by an enemy combatant, or by rebels, or by highway brigands, or a robber in his house at night, or robbers in his house. A martyr is one who is killed by enemy combatants, by rebels, by highway brigands, by robbers in his house while he is sleeping or staying in his house at night. Robbers come in and they kill him. Even if killed by a heavy object. So this is also applicable to those who are stuck under rubble and etc. and pass away because of the heavy weight, because of being trapped. May Allah make it easy for them and raise them in the highest levels of Jinan. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. One who is killed unjustly by a Muslim with a sharp object. So a shaheed and a martyr this is what is identifying some of the situations in which you are a shaheed. A shaheed is also a person who dies of a plague, and a natural disaster, and so on and so forth. There are more that can be added into who is a shaheed. The martyr is buried with his or her blood in his or her clothes and is prayed over without being washed. His weapons, armor, and his coat, and his padded garments, and his armor and everything else are removed. If, however, he was killed while being in a state of major ritual impurity or as a child, then his body is washed. If someone needed ghusl anyway, okay, and then was martyred thereafter, then they should be washed. But if they were just martyred while being in a state of tahara, while not needing ghusl, then they are not washed, and they are buried in the clothes that they were killed in. The same is true for the one whose death becomes prolonged after a battle. So if someone has, for example, had injuries in a battlefield, okay, and then they died from those wounds afterwards, their death is still connected to martyrdom, because they were initially the prolonged illness which led to their death came from that, which makes them a martyr. The same is true for the one whose death becomes prolonged after a battle ends, whether by eating, drinking, or sleeping, being given medicine, having a prayer time elapse while being conscious, or being transferred from battlefield while alive, unless out of fear of being trampled upon by animals. Anyone killed by penal punishment, had or retaliatory punishment, is washed after death. So that's a separate mas'ala. We don't want to go too much into it because it takes you into a different chapter of qisas and had and so on. But this is what we know, or this is what we should know about when it comes to funerals, how they are done, how they are buried, what the adab are of visiting a person who's about to pass away, what the adab are when accompanying the processions of a funeral, how to walk behind, how to wait, how to bury in the soil, how it should be properly, the soil should be placed properly. And then also, when you are putting the soil all over them, you say, "Minha khalaqnakum wa fiha nu'idukum wa minha nukhrijukum taratan ukhra." That this is a Quranic ayah, which is also dua, that from it we created you, and to it you shall return, and from there you shall be resurrected once again, inshallah. That's it for now, inshallah. Are there any questions? Yes, yes, Akhi. What is the ideal way of doing ziyarah? You go in a state of wudu. You go and there are special days of, like for example, on Eid day you could do ziyarah. On a Jum'ah day you could do ziyarah, but you could do ziyarah any time. So you go there and you approach, when you approach the graveyard, you say, "Assalamu alaikum, ya ahl al-qubur, yaghfirullahu lana wa lakum." That, "Oh, salam upon you, O people of the grave, may Allah forgive us and you." And then you can go closer to the grave and you make dua for the person. "Oh Allah, forgive my parents, oh Allah, forgive them, raise them and alleviate their pains for them." You can recite some Quran there as well, and then you leave. Is there anything else you wanted to? You said Surah Yasin is also recommended, yes. Yes, Surah Yasin is recommended. Again, you'll find some difference of opinion on this issue. I'm going to give you a note because some will say this is not, this whole of Surah Yasin is debatable, etc., because of the sanad of the hadith, etc. But the recitation of the Quran, Surah Yasin, yes, is recommended. Whole of the Surah Yasin, why not? If you can do more, why not? Yes.
Western etiquette permits that when you're visiting a grave, you can put flowers and that on it. I don't know if that's permissible.
We should grow plants and etc. on it, not how they just throw flowers on it. This is not from the Sunnah. This is not from the Muslim way of doing things. The flowers that we can give is the dua that we can give. That will give them, inshallah, comfort inside the grave, inshallah.
Is it fard upon the children of the deceased to wash the body?
No, it's not fard at all. It's fard kifaya. It's communal obligation. So anyone does it, it's fine. But if you know how to do it, then of course you have the first right, because you are the son of the father, and it is actually best if you can, because you will do it with the most care. But in most cases, I'll be honest, the people in the funeral service, they probably end up doing it because they receive the body from the hospital and then they wash it and then they do kafan and they bring it to the masjid for Salatul Janazah. Okay, brothers, inshallah, tomorrow is a hadith class from Riyadh al-Salihin, and the following day, inshallah, is our Tartil class. Our winter conference this year is not on the 23rd, it's on the 30th. So not this Saturday, following Saturday, as we've announced in Jum'ah as well. So please have that booked, inshallah. It's going to be a very, very, inshallah, brilliant evening, bi'idhnillah. As well as one of our brothers, he made a request for dua for one of his relatives who's in the hospital, and he's being given a notice of a few hours before they pass away. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. May Allah make their situation easy for them. May Allah grant them the best of endings and grant them sabr jameel and raise them in the highest of places in Jannah. Amin rabbil alameen. And may Allah give their family patience. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.